Pod. Welcome back to another episode of Say Who Say Pod. He's Danny O'Neil in a sports coat. I'm Christian Caple. NFL Combine has come and gone. We are less than a month away from spring practice. Just when you kind of start to feel like we're in the doldrums, the quiet time, the dead time of year, you look up and realize there's things going on, including this weekend at Washington, which will host upwards of 30 2027 prospects for its, not calling it their junior day, doghouse weekend, I think is how they're branding it. But the first really important visit, they're unofficial visits, but first really important visit weekend of the 2027 recruiting calendar.
Maybe this helps. The general question. I am many years removed from covering high school recruiting. Like I did that up until about 2002. And at that point, you still had kids committing during the season, like pretty prominent commitments that would play out. But the majority, I would say, the commitments happened in the summer before a player's senior year. Is that still the majority of the timeline for it? Like when are the mileposts for recruiting now?
Yeah, it's become even more centered around June. You can start to see Washington's big official visit weekends take shape. Those are getting scheduled like right now. Basically, a lot of guys already have scheduled them. So the weekend of May 29th, the weekend of June 5th, the weekend of June 19th. And those are basically closing dates. You know, you might have some real high-end prospects. Like if you remember last year's cycle, they hosted some guys, some five-star type guys where you're like, probably not going to get this guy, but it's good to have him on campus. It's good to be in the mix. Those guys might not announce right away, but ideally, I think the calendar has moved up even more so that you're probably feeling like you're going to need close to 10 guys or so from this group of visitors this weekend, which does include some guys who are already committed, to commit at some point. Like this isn't a closing weekend. It might be for a couple guys. But this is like really put your best foot forward, get into a position where when they come for their visits in June, you can seal the deal. But yeah, I think for the most part, you want to have your class like not all the way done, because like we know the last couple of years they've flipped a couple of guys on signing day in December or right before signing day, so not going to be 100% finished. But you want the majority of your class wrapped up by the end of June anymore.
Do you think Jedd goes in with a Glengarry Glen Ross speech, the Alec Baldwin style? Coffee's for closer. Second place is a set of steak knives. Third place is you're fired.
I think he keeps it a little lighter than that.
Yeah, it's not quite the blade of the knife at your neck. It's a little more like, let's get the enthusiasm up. It's recruiting is such a weird, strange subset of college football because of how important it is, but the timelines for when it's going to happen, like you're talking about, like these guys are, I mean, it's a significant ways out. These guys aren't graduating high school this year. They're not going to be graduating high school a year from now. It's fully a year and a half out from when you would expect to see them playing in games on campus. That's wild.
But the expectation anymore is that they're going to be in your program January 3rd.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. They're not taking the final half of their senior year, which is wild to me and remains wild to me.
Chuck Olson Kia and Shoreline is selling high quality vehicles all year round, not just in the spring, June and January.
You don't need early enrollment.
They don't.
You don't need. There's no in the doghouse. They're always open.
They've been enrolled, Danny, since 1964. In a way,
yeah.
Locally owned and operated, family owned and operated by a family of University of Washington graduates. Chuck Olson Kia and Shoreline, has a friendly, low-pressure sales staff and a competitively priced selection of vehicles. You should go check them out. If you do, you should ask for Henry Olson. And if you talk to Henry, you should tell him that Say Who Say Pod sent you. This episode of Say Who Say Pod also brought to you by our friends at Husky Mobile. Husky Mobile is partnered directly with the University of Washington to offer affordable phone plans for the Husky community with up to 7% of each bill going back to UW athletics. Subscribers can also enjoy game day perks like fast pass lanes, seat upgrades, and giveaways, all while on T-Mobile's nationwide 5G network. Use code ONMontlake at checkout to get your first month free when transferring your number. You can do that at GoHuskyMobile.com. That's GoHuskyMobile.com. Use code ONMontlake at checkout. Thanks again to Husky Mobile for sponsoring today's show. I feel like, especially at On Montlake, my readers are interested in recruiting from more of a like higher level strategic perspective and not necessarily in the weeds tracking visits. There's other sites that do that and do it really well, and it's never really been my lane to try to compete with that. In fact, I feel like anymore when I do write about recruiting approaching that sort of detail, I worry that I lose people who might just shrug or roll their eyes and say, NIL, portal, is this guy even going to sign? Is he even going to be here? And even if he signs, how long is he going to be here? I'm here to try to convince you, if you do look at recruiting that way, why a weekend like this one actually is worth paying attention to.
It's an interesting question because what you brought up is kind of, in some ways, the embodiment of one of the challenges of sort of contemporary media coverage, which is that we now have the ability to have extremely granular looks at things that people are obsessed by. But those places where it is an obsession, it can be really hard for a layperson to understand what's going on. And it can also just be too much. Like I would include, there is a category of people who are really into film study of the NFL, and I can't do it. And it's not even a, hey, I don't get it. It's that I can't watch games like this. It's not fun for me. I don't enjoy it. I have questions about how much you actually know. Like if you know that much more than I do, because I know that I don't really know. And recruiting falls into that category where I've looked at it. I don't want to hear every quarter turn of the screw of how a kid goes about deciding where he's going to go to college. I don't want it because I don't want to be waiting on the whims of 18-year-olds.
Just the family atmosphere.
I just don't want. Let me know when they get there. But I do have big picture interest in recruiting. I know that last year was considered a very good recruiting class for Washington. I know that sort of the reputation that Jedd Fisch has and has developed and earned is that he's someone that sort of recruits, punches above his weight in recruiting, going back to the recruitment of Teteroa McMillan. So I'm declaring myself open to be convinced, Christian.
So there's data to support my argument here.
Ooh, data. I love data.
And I should say, like, whether folks want to pay attention to a March Junior Day unofficial visit weekend or not, like, it matters, right? It all matters. My argument is not that it matters, because that'd be a really short argument. Of course it matters. It's recruiting. Everything matters. Every interaction that you have with a kid in recruiting matters. My argument is that even for folks who sort of do prefer to, hey, like, wake me in December when the class is done, and then I have some idea that, like, these guys are actually going to be here. Even for those folks, a weekend like this is worth paying attention to. And
but by the way, those folks are me. Like,
yes,
you just described me.
Yes, exactly. I also, brief aside, and this is the second week in a row that I've cited the great work of Bill Landis and Doug Lesmerises covering Ohio State football on their Substack page. But I was surprised by this. They took a poll of their readers, basically asking like, what sort of coverage do you want more of? What do you not care about? What do you want less of? And the results for recruiting were like way down. People were like a lot of people, and this isn't everybody, certainly. Ohio State's a huge fan base. Like they're writing for a certain section of it, just like Washington and what we do here. But a lot of, and probably older folks, older readers, older fans are out on wanting to know the details of the recruiting process. I think a big part of that is the transfer portal. And I think like even people who aren't necessarily, recruitniks by nature are a lot more inclined to want to know right now, like, who is this transfer? Where did he come from? How good is he? Because he's going to play like this year. It's like signing a big free agent, right? Whereas that there's going to be some attrition from every recruiting class before the guys ever even have a chance to play. And so I think it's a tougher sell for like the older subset of college football fans to really be locked in on recruiting. With that said, two main reasons why a weekend like this one is really important and worth paying attention to. One, it's the same weekend in March that they did this Junior Day event last year. I think they had around 40 kids on campus last year. It might be just under that this year. Guys are still being added, but roughly in the same ballpark. I think at the time, 5 of those 40 were already committed, not all of which wound up signing. I think they maybe bumped one out. And anyway, 9 of the visitors last year who were uncommitted when they came and visited wound up signing and being part of Washington's recruiting class, which brings me to big reason number 2. You might say, well, okay, so they're here. What guarantee is there that these guys are even going to play, that they're even going to still be at Washington by the time they're ready to contribute to a college football program? Derek Coleman-Brusa, Brian Bonner, Mason James, Ramzak Fruin, Jaron Jones. Those are 5 of the 9. Those are the 5 who finished the recruiting cycle as composite 4-star recruits. And, we'll see how Jaron Jones fits into the cornerback competition. I kind of think he's maybe one of the 2026 signees people aren't talking enough about as a possibility to play early. Really, really skilled. Derek Coleman-Brusa might start at edge rusher. Brian Bonner is going to play. Jedd Fisch is already talking about Mason James as being the number 2 slot receiver behind Desmond Roebuck. This coaching staff has been effusive about Ramzak Fruin, and they're pretty deep at linebacker. We'll see how they use him. He's got the length and physicality to line up out of the edge and rush the passer. He seems like someone who's going to play too. So you combine the fact that obviously this staff feels like they need to build the foundation of their recruiting class with guys who are on campus for this March Junior Day weekend, with the fact that, one, Jedd Fisch likes playing freshmen to begin with. So it's probably a little bit more worth your time to get to know who their signees are in a given class before they do get to campus. And they are simply recruiting a higher caliber of player. When you are in on Derek Coleman-Brusa, when you're in on Brian Bonner, when you're in on Mason James, and if you look at the list that I went over, I picked out one guy at each position to highlight who's visiting this weekend at onmontlake.com. You can go and read that. Those are guys who could play right away. Gavin Williams, safety from Laverne, California, is a top 100 prospect. He could come in and compete for a starting job or a role similar to what Ryland Dillard Allen had last year or what Gavin Day might have this year as a freshman. You look at Tavita Nonu from O'Day. If he's not the number 1 player in the state, he's the number 2 player in the state, and they already have the other top 2 guy, Braylon Pope, the receiver from Sumner, committed. Big time defensive tackle. You look at the D-line talent that they have coming in relative to what it's been on the West Coast in past years, like makes it really important for them to close on some of these guys. Zane Rowe is an edge rusher from Denton, Texas, national top 100 or so guy. That's someone who could impact your roster right away. So you combine just the fact that like their class, if they have another successful class, which they're off to a good start, if it winds up in the ballpark of what they did last year, it's going to include a pretty sizable number of the guys who are on campus this weekend. And they are the kind of players who could impact the team as soon as they get here. So that's my pitch for, like, you might see it pop into your inbox. You might be the kind of fan who's like, junior day recruiting, really? 2027? Jeez, it's March 2026. I don't know. I would say a number of these guys are worth paying attention to right now.
What's their pitch on defense? I understand Jedd Fisch's appeal on offense. Right. He is someone who says, look, I understand how to coach offense. I've worked in a number of NFL systems for NFL coaches. I'm going to get you ready to play at the next level. And you look at the steps forward that receivers have taken and quarterbacks have taken and running backs have taken under me. You see what I built. What's the pitch they make to defensive players?
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine it'd be like, hey, come play for one of the best defensive coordinators in the country.
Yeah.
Because they think that of Ryan Walters. Ryan Walters has some, and this is just one guy, one position, but he's got some Devin Witherspoon tape to lean on at this point, right? Like that's the most high profile guy who's played for him. I think it's more just like what Washington is as a program generally, and in the Big Ten. And hey, look at where this roster was when talking like Jedd Fisch here. When I came in at the start, look at what we added last year. Look at the steps we took just in win-loss record and competitiveness in year 2. We're going to be a top 25 program going into this season. There's a lot of momentum in our recruiting operation. We just signed our highest rated class of the modern era. Don't you want to come be part of this? And then, I'm sure for certain guys, there's a nice paycheck involved.
Yeah.
It's like you pick your spots there, like they did with Derek Coleman-Brusa, like they did with Cody Green. Mm-hmm. It's a defense that's coming off like a very sound year, despite not having a ton of star talent. Like you saw what Ephesians Prysock and Takario Davis ran at the combine. Obviously had some dudes at corner who could run. One of them full time, one of them part time because of injuries. But yeah, I think it's just like, look, we got continuity in our defensive staff, got our coordinator, taken care of. Everybody's back. This is a group that, a coaching staff that had a very quality defense in the Big Ten without having the kind of players like you, 4-star top 100 recruit, who can come in and raise the ceiling even higher.
Yeah, you're right. And what you're doing is you're putting on historical footage of big defensive games or big defensive moments in Husky Stadium history, like 2001, 2000, the Miami game where they upset them, and saying you're the kind of defensive pass rusher that can put over that. Can you imagine what it would be like to play in a crowd in front of an environment like this? Because that is definitely the sales pitch is you can see and hear what this place is like when it really gets rocking. And what our defense needs is some big nasties up front to come and get after the opposing quarterback. So yeah, I get a little pumped up thinking about that pitch that you make, because the defense did take huge strides last year. I think the progress they made from beginning to end, but you also clearly saw what was missing is they need to be faster and stronger up front. They need more numbers, they need more speed, and they need more strength up front.
And you kind of, you mentioned the historical stuff. Like, I think the tradition of death row and the whole DBU thing, like you still hear that come up, right? And it's took a little bit of a step back from that, even, in the Kalen DeBoer's 2 years, as great as they were, like they were not known for defense. But Thaddeus Dixon talked, right after he got to Washington about, it really wasn't about a coaching staff or what the program is now. Like I'm a West Coast guy and I remember DBU. I remember watching all these great Washington defensive backs come up through the years, which, by the way, did you see that the Chiefs might be trading Trent McDuffie to the Rams?
I did see that.
Interesting. Jimmy Lake's with the Rams.
He is with the Rams. Trent McDuffie's a hell of a player.
He's very good.
I have a tremendous fondness for all of those defensive backs that came out in that time. And he is, I think, in the pros has turned out to be the best one.
But I do think when you think about some of like the fondest times throughout Washington history, the run in 2023 is really like the only one that was not predicated on like
Yes.
elite badass defense.
Yes.
2016, very much so. 1991, very much so. 1984, very much so.
2000, you've got a clutch quarterback, but it was a pretty physically punishing defense.
Yeah, 2000's like
played.
they really weren't great at anything except winning, by the way, which is like pretty important, you know.
Yeah. That was a crazy year because of the comebacks they had, and then the injury to Curtis Williams, when that occurred and how they rallied. Yeah. I mean,
like it's not a team you look at across the box scores and the stats and go, oh, okay, like this is why they won. They were just like, they were very talented. Like you said, they had a clutch, tough, just natural winner at quarterback.
yes.
They ran the option well. They made clutch plays. They made big plays, and they had just enough NFL talent to beat everybody they should have.
You got the marriage of, because look, you can criticize Lambright's management of the program quite a bit, but he developed a toughness on that roster, and the players he recruited, like there was a level of toughness from the guys that he'd brought in. And then you paired that with Neuheisel's sort of just car salesman optimism, the unrepentant optimism that came from him. And it really worked. I don't know how sustainable that was, but one of Rick's talents has always been the ability to especially navigate difficult situations. And he was at his best as Washington's coach with how he managed the injury to Curtis Williams and kept Curtis connected to the program and sort of sustained everybody through that. The Northwest Championship probably is second best accomplishment, but it was, that the 2000 is a little bit different, but they had, Jeremiah Farms was an absolute badass on that defense.
Were you surprised by how fast Prysock and Davis ran?
Yes. Yeah, I was.
4.45 for Prysock, 4.41 for Davis.
Yeah, I would have said if Prysock is at 4.5, that is a hell of it. Like 4.59 would have been a good result for him, given how big he is, and mid 4.4s. And then Takario Davis is a blazing time. I don't know how high that vaults him because I don't know how teams are going to look at his health, but that was a hell of that's a really, really good weekend for both of those guys. There's no question in my mind that both are going in the first half of the draft, and you might see one of them go in the first round.
Pretty good athletic showing for Carver Willis too.
Mm-hmm.
Felt like he moved really well.
Yes.
Not the best showing for Denzel Boston. I don't know how much it matters. 35-inch vertical, didn't run the 40. Dropped some passes. But like, this is what's funny. Got a ton of Denzel Boston tape.
Mm-hmm.
You watched him play as a starting number one receiver for 2 years, but for 3 full seasons as a guy on the team, playing at least a little bit.
In 2 different offenses.
Did it ever cross your mind that Denzel Boston's hands are a problem?
No.
So
no, I think he's a natural catcher and he's got a really big body. And those are sort of things that are beyond testing. I don't think it hurts him. I think the question in my mind has always been, okay, is he going to get up into the top 20 picks? Is he going to get up into the top half of the first round? And I think in order for that to happen, it would be a matter of speed. We'll see how it goes, but neither he nor Jonah ran the 40-yard dash at the combine. So we'll kind of see how that goes. I don't think he quote unquote hurt his stock. Denzel Boston hurt his stock at all. For that matter, I don't think it hurts Jonah Coleman that he didn't run either.
I wonder if they will at Pro Day. Because Boston said during the interviews he was going to do everything but the bench press. So I don't know if maybe he'd tweaked something, or just that day wasn't feeling it, or he talked to his reps and they said, there's nothing to gain here, let's not.
It's such a weird thing. The scouting combine has become the single most overblown data point in the draft evaluation and sort of the workouts that happen there. I'm fairly convinced of that. And trying to decode sort of who helped themselves and who hurt themselves, I'm increasingly convinced that you can help yourself as a player. I'm not sure how much not participating in events actually ends up hurting you.
Do you see what Jonah Coleman said about pass blocking?
Yeah, it was what everybody wanted to hear. It's so funny when everybody becomes. It was basically this like, look, if you're making $2 million a year, like your job is to protect the guy back there who's making a ton more. I was like, I wonder why nobody's figured out how to say it that way before, because I'd never heard anyone put it in terms of business investment protection before. It's a really good idea.
Yeah, that's at first I thought, now that's someone who came from a Jedd Fisch program. But could imagine Scotty Graham putting it in those terms as well. He like, I remember someone asked him once about the importance of pass protection, and he looked at the person like, what, like it's you have to do it. You're not gonna play. Like, what do you mean? Like, how important is it? It couldn't be more important. You know, he looked at the person as if they'd asked, like, how important is it for a running back to be able to sprint with a football in his arms? Like, it was just, why would you even ask that?
It's a really fun. I think that's the natural reaction that most football people have. And then every once in a while, you'll see a player, and I mean, the foremost one is Shaun Alexander, who just doesn't seem interested in it at all. And it's almost like he's daring. He's like, yeah, I'm not going to do that well. And you're like, but you've got to. And it's like, yeah, I don't know.
I guess back then you could get away with it a little more.
I don't know. I mean, it's certainly the one thing that mindset does. I've actually been thinking about this sort of thing a lot. You can only get away with, quote, get away with stuff as a professional athlete for as long as you remain superlative. And if you have that mindset that, there's some stuff that I'm just not going to sweat too much, it basically guarantees that it eliminates any reasonable doubt or equity that you have. So I'm not even sure if it's an era thing. I just think that, man, like, people wonder, like, okay, why Shaun Alexander went from leading the league and winning MVP in 2005 to being released by Seattle after the 2007 season and basically getting 1 month with Washington. And that was it. His career was done. And the answer to why that happened is, well, I think it's contained in sort of the general approach he took to pass blocking, which was if it wasn't the lead back opportunity, he wasn't that interested in doing it. And you put an expiration date on yourself.
I was just thinking, did Shaun Alexander ever line up next to a quarterback who was getting paid more than him?
Yes.
I guess as a rookie, I mean, on his rookie deal, he would have.
Yeah, but even so, 2005, he played on the franchise tag, and Hasselbeck had just signed a new contract that year. So it would have been, but he certainly saw himself as the featured element of, he was the star. He saw himself as the star. Absolutely. Which is not a good trait for a running back. Like, that's even if that's the case, that you are the most talented guy, that your team's not going to go all that far if that's the case.
Back then it felt like it, though. And at least the gulf wasn't like enormous between the pay of a star running back and the pay of a star quarterback. You didn't have these gigantic
certainly the salaries were all smaller. That's interesting to look back now. Would you say that the gap, because you definitely had running backs who were bigger stars and had longer careers, like Emmitt Smith played forever, Edgerrin James played forever, like guys, you had more of those type of players who had multi-year legacies as a team's leader than you have now, where someone like Derrick Henry, who was a stud in Tennessee and then remains a stud in Baltimore. You just like that's an outlier now. You're not going to see as many guys. If that were running backs more important to winning, then yeah, you might be able to make that argument. But I think really what we've come to see is that quarterback, like as good as your running back is in the NFL, like a good running back, a great running back can be the difference between a good and a great team. But there's no team that's going to become great because they've got a great running back. Whereas there are plenty of crappy mid, maybe even below average teams that can become really good with a good quarterback.
It's going to be interesting to see the career carry number for Derrick Henry from high school, college, and the NFL when he's done. I would wager a guess no player will ever approach it. And he probably doesn't lead running backs all time in that number just because of like how I'm sure all the greats over the years had some insane high school carry totals. But there will never be another player come close to the number of career touches that Derrick Henry will have had by the time he's done.
Yeah, it's really funny. And is he like Nolan Ryan in that way? Because you have pitchers
who kind of seems like it,
like shouldered huge burdens. And now you've got like people are much more careful about pitch counts. But the really weird thing is that certainly there are players who break down with too much usage. But in some ways, by establishing these hard and fast limits, you've also prevented situations where a guy like the freaks of nature that could withstand that, or someone like Derrick Henry, we never get a chance to find out. Like Paul Skeens might be that kind of athlete that he could be like Nolan Ryan. We're never going to get a chance to find out though, because the Pittsburgh Pirates are like, you're too valuable for us to take that opportunity. We're sticking it like you're going to have a governor switch on you. It is. I don't know that like it's an interesting question. That was one of the points in the book, The Arm by Jeff Passan, that he talked about that sort of by creating one size fits all limits, you've eliminated the possibility of truly exceptional, like physical freak performances.
It's too bad.
Yeah.
The Matt Cavanaugh hire is, if not official, then at least like has been officially reported. And I can confirm myself. It is expected to, the Huskies are expected to add longtime NFL assistant Matt Cavanaugh as a senior offensive assistant, which is how this has been going, how this has been shaping up ever since Jimmy Doherty and Washington parted ways. They're just going to promote J.P. Lossman to quarterback's coach. There's your 10 assistants. Jedd Fisch also talked about this on the Andy and Ari podcast. And bring in Cavanaugh too. So the sunny take on this, because I know there's a lot of folks out there who want Jedd Fisch to give up play calling, hire a dedicated OC, be more of a CEO, so on and so forth. I don't think that is worth discussing much because it's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to happen. Jedd Fisch is going to call plays. It is what it is. I also, and we've talked about this, like I'm pretty hesitant to wade into the criticism of play calling.
What do people like? You're more familiar with this. What do people complain about with his play calling?
I mean, if you're looking for specific examples,
like is it the speed option into the boundary against Washington
and
State?
That's
that
one
sort of
where
stuff?
I one of the rare exceptions where I would wade in and say like, I don't know what they were thinking there. I think the lack of usage for Adam Mohammed in the Oregon game.
Okay.
That he ran so well and was so productive, and he only got I think 14 carries and. Going away from the run at times, but like I'm always going to be of the mind like these guys are working with so much data and have done so much studying and have such an intimate understanding of who does what well on their team, who does what poorly, who is not at full health, who is not at full strength in that moment. The defensive looks that they've been given, the defensive looks that they scouted on film, the defensive looks they're actually getting in game. Yeah. For any of us to sit here and say like, oh, they should have done this, I don't know. I'm not saying like you can never be right doing that. It's just that's not a mode of criticism like I'm super interested in involving myself in. So if you accept that, like, look, Jedd Fisch is going to be the play caller, let's not waste time on a discussion of should he handle this differently.
That's not going to happen. Yeah.
I think the idea of bringing in someone who's been around a ton of NFL offense, a bunch of different NFL franchises, has been an NFL coordinator, an NFL play caller, from outside, and there's a prior relationship, but their paths have crossed. So this is not like he's meeting him for the first time. I think if you feel like this offense needs some freshening or like new eyes, and you accept that that's not going to come in the form of like hiring a different coordinator to call plays, I think it's encouraging that there's someone from outside Jedd Fisch's coaching tree who he's never called offense with before,
Yeah.
who he's adding to the staff with the stated intent to like help with situations and bring a different perspective. I think like everyone thinks back to 2016 when the offense had been very stagnant under Jonathan Smith. Jonathan Smith was the only guy on that assistant staff who got a 1-year extension instead of a 2-year extension. The writing was kind of on the wall for him. They brought in Jeff Tedford as an analyst. No coaching on the field, no working with the players, just helping the coaches, sitting in the booth, looking at the offense. And a lot of folks point to that as like a big reason for their offensive turnaround in 2016. I think John Ross had a little more to do with it than Jeff Tedford, personally.
I'm a Tedford truther.
But yeah,
I've got a little bit of Tedford truther in me.
Now, I'm not saying Matt Cavanaugh is Jeff Tedford, but I feel like that's the ceiling, right? That's the ideal for bringing in a senior analyst who's not recruiting, not worried about, he can coach players because anybody can coach players now. It's not like there's rules against it, but really, really focused on like helping Jedd Fisch, helping the offensive staff, offensive structure, game planning, situational football. Yeah, I don't know that it's like a tremendous value add above whatever Jimmy Doherty was doing. But I think it's an encouraging development as far as like Jedd Fisch's outlook on, look, I'm the play caller and I'm not giving up play calling. So how do we get this offense better?
It's a benefit to have someone that has not been alongside Jedd for the past 6 years. Like there is a clear, in my mind, there is a clear benefit to that, or the last 5 years, because you do get fresh ideas, a little bit of sort of critique. Why are we doing it this way? Like that part there is a benefit to that. The other thing, and you basically pointed this out, it's a challenge to get sort of a strong voice into the offense or change into the offense, because the caliber of assistants that Jedd Fisch is able to hire on offense is going to be limited by the fact of how much control Jedd has over the offense. If you've got a guy that really wants to be a head coach and is an offensive coordinator level candidate, he's probably going to prefer a job where he would have a stronger hand. And maybe it's not even in a stronger hand in calling the plays, but be more clearly identified as a guy who's an influence. No matter what the offensive coordinator or quarterbacks coach does at Washington under Jedd Fisch, ultimately that's going to be seen as Jedd Fisch's offense, and rightfully so. So I think how you laid it out is a very good way of looking at it. Yeah, I think having someone, Jedd Fisch clearly has a lot of respect for and potentially even ambitions to coach in the NFL. And having a guy, what you want is someone that's going to be willing and able to challenge Jedd and not try to sort of that's when you get the benefits of sort of a second set of eyes or a devil's advocate, someone who is going to push back against some of those things.
And so that's the flip side of the Sonny interpretation, right? If the glass half full is, oh, all right, awesome. Look, he's willing to bring somebody into this operation with some fresh eyes to maybe challenge him a little bit. The flip side of that is like, is the line of communication going to be very open to challenge and to change? And I'm not one sitting here saying they gotta change this, and this. This is not a playoff team unless they change this, and this offensively. But whenever those issues come up, or whenever like, hey, this is how I've kind of preferred to handle this down and distance from this yard line against this type of defensive scheme in the past, and Matt Cavanaugh or anybody else says like, I really like doing it this way. Can I show you? Let me just show you, like, what if we tried this? Is Jedd Fisch going to be willing to implement major or minor changes, or very, very subtle changes even? Or is it like, because the worry when you bring in an analyst, the worry is, and we talked about what the upside is, the worry is like, did you just bring this person in because they're like a safe person to have around, and you're still kind of just going to do whatever you want?
But the safe option is probably to keep things status quo, right? I mean, I guess I'm assuming that.
True.
If Jedd's not going to listen to feedback, it doesn't matter who you have in that job. So I think that's one mistake that fans will make when they look at it, of saying, like, this guy doesn't have the credentials, or this guy doesn't have the experience to really push back. How receptive, especially when it's the head coach calling plays, is to pushback depends entirely on the coach, not on the credentials of the other guy. And in fact, I would make the argument that the more credentials that the person who's being asked to push back has, the more reluctant, if a head coach was going to be reluctant about taking that guidance, the more reluctant he's going to be based on the credentials, because he might be insecure. That part of, is this the safe hire, or is this? I think safety would have been staying status quo. Like, that's the safest approach, is usually, especially when you've got an assistant that's followed you, is to maintain that. And I don't know if that was an option for the Huskies. It's very possible that Jimmy Doherty just said, I'm out and I'm moving on, and that's how it went. But the safe thing would have been to keep the situation as it was, and that's not the route they've gone.
Yeah, they didn't have to hire anybody. Like, senior offensive assistant is not like an essential position. Like, you cannot coach a football team without this role. So it's reactive in the sense that, like, you lost a person from your staff, and even though JP Lossman took on that person's position coaching responsibilities, you now want to bring someone else into the building because you lost someone heading out of the building. But your coaching staff could just be one person lighter, right? There's no just like there's no restriction, there's no mandatory minimums for number of coaches either. It does sound as if Jimmy Doherty was pushed out, from what I understand. So be interesting to learn more about that at some point, though I doubt we will in concrete detail.
There's nothing wrong with that. Like, I will say, as someone who has covered coaching staffs over the years, that the questions and issues of loyalty, the real signs of trouble for coaches can be when their most capable assistants move off and get other jobs, and the guys that they wound up keeping for the longest are the ones who, out of very noble feelings of loyalty or closeness, they keep together, and that they would be better off getting someone who is from a different frame of mind. Like, you do get benefits of change, and pushing or making a change, choosing to make a change on your coaching staff, I think is generally positive. Those cases are generally, because we always think, there's a great book called Quit by Annie Duke, and the basic conclusion of the book is that when we think we get to a 50-50 decision, that usually our tendency to want to stay in the status quo means that we stay in the status quo too long. When we think, like, oh, I could go one way or the other, well, actually, you probably should make the change, because the fact that what it takes to get you to feel that it's 50-50, the odds are way balanced. And there's a number of studies they do, but I would say that applies to coaching staffs. When you say, like, maybe it's really time for us to make a change, there's probably time a year ago and you just weren't ready to do it, because humans, as a general tendency, resist change.
It's like leaving Substack for Ghost, honestly. Like,
how's that gone?
I first had the thought a while back, but like, and I've talked with other people on Substack about, hey, you should look into this. That could probably save you a lot of money. It could probably be like, better brand building or whatever. And I totally get like, but this is working well enough. And what if I break something, And so, I fought that for a long time. Like, change is hard.
There's an experiment that Andy Duke mentions, and the book is called Quit. It's really good. And it's an experiment that a social scientist did where he asked people to take a decision that they were 50-50 on, and asked them to outsource it to him. And he would use a program that flipped a coin to let a coin flip decide these. And some of them were supposedly big decisions, but something they were willing to say, okay, I truly can't make up my mind. It's a totally equal decision. Do a coin flip and make it. And then he went back and interviewed those people like a year after that decision to ask, is the decision the right one or not? And the people who made the change were significantly more happy than the people who the result said stay in the same place. Now, the majority of people responded that they were pleased with the decision, but that probably reflects sort of a self-rationalizing tendency that humans have of, like, even if it wasn't the ideal scenario, we'll say like, oh, it probably was worked out for the best. But if it was just equal, those two rates would be equally happy. The people who the coin told to make a change, to take a new job or to, were significantly happier. It was like 25%. And so the conclusion he drew was that, well, if that's the case, it actually wasn't a 50-50 decision. Like these making that change was a significantly better option. You just weren't able to recognize or act on that option until you got a bigger push. And that, so the conclusion of the book is you should quit earlier.
We'll have to check back in with Jedd Fisch in a year to see if he's happier.
Yeah. Would you say that you're happy? Now, I will say that all coaches will tell you, like, coaches are not. There's one thing that football coaches are not.
Yeah,
is
we
honestly
shouldn't have done that.
Introspective. Yeah. We really screwed that one up.
Yeah, I made the wrong decision there. That was my bad. IP McFarland is never happy.
Oh, he's occasionally happy,
Well,
isn't he?
Sometimes.
I don't know that he's grouchy this week. Here is our conversation with IP McFarland.
Good morning, guys. Obviously, the focus of football over the past week has been the NFL Combine and the trickle down thereof. My text this morning to the two of you was my complete bewilderment over Caleb Downs being the 8th pick in the draft. There's no possible way there are 7 players better than him in this draft, but that's neither here nor there. He strikes me, though, as one of these guys that I would bet my right arm, barring injury, has I don't know about Hall of Fame, but 8+ year starter kind of career, which probably means the Hall of Fame. Who are the players in UW history? And you guys hate it when I go negative. Who are the players in UW history that you knew, and I want you to look beyond the first round, who are the guys you knew were going to be successes? And if you're willing to just recognize for once that sometimes the coin comes up tails, who are the players you knew weren't going to make it? I wish you both a good week. Go Dogs.
What did I say? I hadn't even listened to that. I love it.
He asked us who we knew. I was maybe 20. So I hate to put this one because didn't have much experience as a journalist. I knew Lawyer Malloy was going to be a stud. Like I really deep in my bones felt that as a conviction. I thought he was unbelievable, and the fact that he went in the second round was definitely more related to perceptions of positional value than his ability to play football. I thought Miles Bryant was going to be a pro for a long time, but that's not really because you're asking about, like, Miles wasn't drafted, but I was like, that guy's going to play in the NFL for 6 or 7 years. Who else would be people that I was so completely sold on? Do you have one jumping off the top of your head?
Two jump out right away. And I assume we're omitting like a Reggie Williams type prospect here.
Yeah, see, I was going to say Reggie's one that I would say I missed on because I thought that guy was going to.
Well, I'm thinking NFL, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I thought that guy was going to lead the world forever once he got to the NFL. I thought he was built to play in the NFL.
So are we? Is Ian framing this question from a UW college lens? Like, who are guys coming out of high school who you knew would be like really good college players? Or are we talking about guys who were stars at Washington and you just knew they were going to be great pros? I guess we could put them in two different buckets.
I took it as college to pro.
I mean, one guy who's TBD because he just finished his second year is Rome Odunze.
Yeah. I'm pretty confident on him.
I thought coming out, like meeting him for the first time when he was still in high school, I thought like this guy is he's a special person. So now I can pair that with what I've seen from him, just, literally just his huddle highlights. But like there is no reason why this guy can't be an All-American. And then based on what he did in college, I thought there's no reason why this guy can't be like a high level NFL receiver, an all-pro NFL receiver.
Yeah. I would agree with that. It was clear when he was a true freshman that he was one of the most talented athletes on any field he was on and needed to have the ball in his hand 15 to 20 times a game.
Another I'd put in the same discussion is Laiatu Latu.
That's an interesting one.
Maybe the best high school tape I've ever seen. Obviously had to take a bit of a detour. Talk about a guy, man, in this portal era who never wanted to leave Washington. Wanted to be just like a guy who wanted to be at Washington but simply couldn't because he couldn't get cleared medically there. Goes to UCLA, has the career that everybody associated with, but like Laiatu Latu was going to be good is not some like hot take or revelation. The dude was a top 150 recruit with offers from everybody. Like, he was a stud. Everyone knew he was a stud. But he's one I would have been stunned because there's 4 and 5 star guys all the time who don't pan out. I would have been stunned if he didn't pan out. Has the career at UCLA that everybody at UW thought he would have at UW. First defensive player drafted. So, and again, for career longevity and everything, like he's still TBD, I guess, in that same category as Odunze, but I think a lot of people fall in the, obviously because he was a top 10 pick, but like a lot of people are right there with you with Reggie Williams. Like there are still people around UW today who are like, I have never been more certain that a guy would be awesome as a pro. And he was just okay for a couple years. And that was kind of it.
Yeah. Vita Vea, I would include in this list of, I thought he was going to be a dominant NFL player. And that has absolutely been the case. Budda Baker.
Yeah, Budda's
probably better than I thought he was because I think that I think Budda's been the best safety in the game at a couple different points over these last few years, and but Budda was someone I thought was an absolute stud too. Guys that I kind of missed on, I thought Donald Butler had a good career. I thought Donald Butler was going to be like an all-pro level middle linebacker. And he was never at that tier. Really good NFL player, but not quite in that star level. I was pretty convinced he was an absolute stud.
I thought Azim Victor had similar potential. Yeah, he got hurt. I mean, a serious injury. And then I just kind of had a weird senior year. I don't think always saw eye to eye with the coaching staff for whatever reason. Fun college player.
God, he was so energetic. Just a huge hitter too.
So, I mean, guys who I really thought would be great pros. I mean, it's a college to pro is so it's a very narrow lane, first of all, because you're only talking about, with the exception of the 2024 draft, you're only talking about a handful of guys each year who even really have a chance. And by the time, by the time their career's over, you got a pretty good idea, I guess. And there's some injury stuff here too, but like I probably thought Sidney Jones would have made more of an impact in the pros.
He had about as tough a luck as you can have injury wise when he hurt his Achilles. That was brutal. I thought Jeremy Stevens was going to be a much better pro. That probably relates less to on-field ability or natural ability and more to work ethic and citizenship.
To put it mildly.
Yeah, but I thought he was watching him. If you're going to say of like guys when they got on campus, Reggie Williams absolutely, like as soon as you saw him play football, as soon as I saw him play football in high school, I thought he was going to be an absolute stud in college, and he was from the very first game. Charles Frederick was someone that you heard a lot about how good he was, and he was a good player, but not. I mean, he and Reggie Williams were like two of the top three, I think, high school wide receivers. Reggie looked that way and played that way. Frederick's career didn't go that way.
Yeah. And I feel like I've said this before. He is one though, like I think because of the shadow of Reggie and the fact he was a 5-star recruit and like that whole Florida contingent. He is one, if you go look at his stats, he probably outperformed like the way people remember him for all those reasons. Like if you look at the balls he caught and the yardage he gained, and he was obviously like great punt returner. I feel like a lot of people who even like watched him play would look at the numbers and be like, oh yeah, okay, he was actually, I don't remember him being quite that productive.
Yeah, I would agree that people would feel the same way about Jermaine Kearse, I think, too, if they went and looked at just how freaking productive. And he's probably
season.
at a different level for how great Kearse was. And then I think Charles Frederick played linebacker in arena football, which was hilarious to me.
Gosh, I'm trying to. Are there any like obvious ones? I'll say like, and I didn't really have any conviction around this because I just wouldn't at this position because it's such a crapshoot in the league. But like Savon Ahmed probably like hung around a little bit longer than I'd have thought. But again, like it's not like I didn't think he could or that he wasn't talented enough to. Talk about someone who's like disappointing 40 time really had nothing to do with anything, by the way. Like that was the silliest thing to me. Cause like you've seen him play.
Yeah.
He's fast. He's really fast with a football in his hands. He can run. Like whatever happened to cause him to not run sub 4.5 or whatever, like who cares?
It's a very strange, very, very strange process of NFL draft evaluation, especially when you get to the sort of the fringes of that. But yeah, the idea that Ahmed, there was a question about his speed is pretty ludicrous.
I mean, Will Dissly playing enough as a true freshman defensive lineman to not redshirt, going to drafted tight end who has played well in the pros when healthy. I don't think anybody saw that coming.
No.
But, you know, by the time he finished his college career, it was obvious he was a very good tight end who was good enough to play in the NFL. But, you know, they brought him in as a 2-star recruit from Montana.
Nobody really thought he was going to get drafted that high. Was he drafted in the 4th round? Right? Like he might be a 6th or a 7th round pick.
He was invited to the combine. Mm-hmm. So he was on the radar.
Yes.
But yeah, like that run of tight ends was really incredible. And that's like Drew Sample, right? We talk about like underappreciated guys like when we asked Chris Peterson from that era, not someone they threw the ball to a ton, but super important in the run game, super important as a leader, leading by example, just doing everything right all the time. And hey, he's a 2nd round pick, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know that anybody saw Drew Sample as a 2nd round pick coming out of high school necessarily, or even really like toward the end of his career. It's just the average like football watching brain, you know, if a tight end isn't catching a ton of passes, you just don't think about him getting drafted that high.
Yeah. Well, the tight end has been the position, I think. DBU was earned for those few years. If you're going to say the most consistent position that Washington has produced pretty exceptional NFL talent at, it's tight end.
I'll give us some credit too. Not that it was like the boldest take. Another guy who was invited to the combine, he was on the radar, but like I don't think either of us were surprised Jack Westover found a way to make an NFL roster and play.
No, he's gonna play for a long time in the league. Like, he's going to play for the next 4 or 5 years. I don't have any doubt about that.
And we're not
really
alone.
Smart guy. Yeah,
in
really
that.
smart guy. Got great hands. Like those are the kind of he falls into that Miles Bryant category for me.
I think that's all we've got.
It was pretty fun. I was pumped about the combine. I was really happy that Davis and Prysock ran like they did. I was pretty excited. And shout out to Sadiq, man, the Oregon tight end. That was wild.
I don't know how close it was. Like, I think it was, was not a narrow victory when Oregon signed him. But Washington was like one of the 2 or 3 schools he was looking at. And I remember thinking, like, okay, be an interesting athlete if they could get him. It's like I remember him going back to his recruitment, and so to watch him blow up and then run a 4.41.
I think it was 4.39.
4.39. God, it's just insane.
Yeah, it's really crazy. It's a crazy number. Now, I don't think you should ever draft a tight end in the first round. Like, that would be like a hard and fast rule. But someone's going to draft him in the top 10. And based on his athleticism, you can absolutely understand why.
We'll talk to you next week, I think.
Peace.